Roy in McHenry, Illinois. Hey, Roy, what's up?
Okay, it's Ray, but that's okay. It's no
Ray, I'm sorry. Yeah, it says Ray.
Yeah. My comments are about that first guest you had on today, and I'd like to kind of talk about it from a clinical perspective.
We're talking about, just if I may, just for the people who just tuned in and don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Our first guest was a fellow who was saying that he wasn't quite going as far as the fellow we were talking about, but the fellow we were talking about is a state representative who was arguing that everybody should be getting guns because an economic disaster is coming. His name is Matt Shea, and he's a state representative in the state of Washington. Arm up, get ready. And I was just asking, who do you think you're going to be shooting at when the disaster comes? Go, your turn.
Yeah, and from a clinical perspective, what's happening is millions of people are being encouraged to have anxiety disorders.
Yes.
The ability to imagine potential threats in advance, that's a helpful thing, could even be life-saving. But anxiety, in the end, is a figment of imagination. It's about things that haven't happened yet and often never do or never will. So one way to define an anxiety disorder is people spend too much time in their imagination instead of here and now. And that's where millions of people are being encouraged to spend their time and do every day. Then there's the question of just how realistic that imaginations are. And that's where people like Beck, Limbaugh, and Hannity, and a whole bunch of other people have come in for so long now. What they do so well is create these possible and plausible scenarios for people, but they're highly unlikely. And what it does is it blurs the line between reality and what's imagination for so many people. And then they frame those things in a way that most people would tend to think would be awful, like using words like communism and socialism and dictator and tyranny, especially for somebody who grew up in a Cold War. All those things are very inflammatory. And they do it so well. And I think what you're seeing now is the result of that. That's been going on for years now, and now you've got people literally plugging themselves into their fight or flight responses needlessly over figments of their imagination. And quite frankly, it's pretty scary from a clinical point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't disagree. And one of the, apropos of that, one of the things I've observed over the years is that people who are constantly imagining a scary future tend to, and it becomes part of their lives, tend to suffer from anxiety disorders. Those are the high, thin, screechy kinds of emotions. And the people who suffer from the low, dark, thick, awful emotions tend to be the ones who instead are imagining the past and continuously re-experiencing shame or guilt, and that leads to depression, to depressive disorders. And there's a spectrum of these things that have to do with past and future, that have to do with the intensity of the imagination or recollection, or imagined recollection for that matter. And
you're talking about with depression, that's so-called ruminating, where you just go over and over. But see, that's another factor here is brain physiology. If you simply hear something over and over again, or repeat it to yourself, and it might be ruminating, literally facts start to feel like, or opinions start to feel like facts, and imagination starts to feel like reality to you. And that's what's going on because that's what those guys do so well. If you listen to them day after day, there's always that repetition, and if nothing else, there's an underlying theme that they keep hitting over and over and over again. And just millions of people just don't see how they're being manipulated. And I think we're starting to see the results of that, of years of that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.